This video is sponsored by MPP. Last year, we focused on Netflix's miniseries Ripley. We talked about black and white, composition, and much more. However, 2025 has brought back another series that all photographers could benefit from watching, Severance. And with it, we can learn new tips around composition, especially if you're a fan of minimalism, storytelling, lighting, and per extension, shadows, of course, color theory, how to establish a mood, etc. So grab a drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's go straight to another video. Severance revolves around employees at Lumen Industries, a sort of mysterious corporation, if you will, where in one of the floors, certain workers undergo a procedure called severance. This is to surgically split their memory into two distinct identities, the innies and the outies. The innie is a version of themselves that only exists at work, and as such, they don't have memories of their personal life. The outie, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite. It's the version of themselves outside of work, thus with no memories of what they do at work. And despite us following a group of characters, the main one is Mark Scout, played by Adam Scott, who we understand as the narrative develops is grieving and chooses to be severed so that he can escape the pain of his personal life. And as the series develops, there's an interesting parallel between both versions of Mark, as both of them, innie and outie, seem to question their purpose, their life's purpose, and Lumen's true intentions. So in terms of themes, the show explores ideas of identity, alienation, loneliness, the corporate world, greed, power, and control, in what I can describe to be a sort of dystopian Orwellian world that not only amplifies all the themes and ideas described before, but also sets an unsettling, mysterious tone through the visuals and the acting. And so I want to start by talking about composition, in this particular case minimalism, and see what we can learn from this show. And in a recent video here on the channel, and I'm here paraphrasing myself, we were discussing what makes a great photography, and one of the aspects I talked about was the idea that technique or the choices that one makes, visually speaking, they need to be on par with the nature of the subject, the nature of the ideas that are inherently associated with that subject. And I want us to actually observe a few things here on this show and see why certain techniques are used and what ideas they produce. So transporting this to Severance, the first thing we notice is the immediate precision of each frame, the symmetry, the proportionality of parallel lines, straight angles, centered objects, and subjects. And this is all vital to precisely portray the type of world the narrative takes place as a cold, synthetic, robotic, and dystopian world that is the complete opposite of what we see in our world today. And I think this almost rigid symmetry serves the purpose of mirroring the highly controlled, oppressive environment of not only Lumen, but also of these characters' lives. And it is my opinion that this visual formality also enforces the idea of control through the long and symmetrical spaces, depth of field, and leading lines, such as the never-ending white halls at Lumen, the way furniture is arranged, and the empty spaces will lead to the sense of inevitability for the characters' entrapment, almost like they have no choice but to follow the path laid out for them. But more importantly, we the audience are also reminded of the void corporate world creates in people by removing their individuality, by emphasizing the monotony of their daily lives in their work. And actually, this is a really funny coincidence. As I was writing this video, I kind of thought of a photographer that I later understood to be a great inspiration for the world of this show, and that is photographer Lars Thunbjörk. He's a Swedish photographer that actually in the 80s and 90s produced, late 80s and 90s, produced very interesting work around this corporate world. And in his case though, it was actually focusing on how chaotic it is, but there is this sense of space, color, proportions that is we can see kind of like it being tied up with the world of Severance. And I've made a short video about it. I'll leave it link here somewhere, or I'll put it up on screen. And I think it's very important. If you want to find out more about Lars Thunbjörk, I'll link it down below as well. Let us now talk about storytelling, and I want to put at the forefront of this segment one technique that is greatly used throughout the show: repetition. And I think we can talk about this idea of repetition at various levels, almost like layers of an onion, if you will. But I want to talk about two particular layers. The outer layer of repetition is manifested in this eerie or mysterious feeling and mood that affects all spaces and the different characters of the narrative. Meaning that this mysterious tone, this suppression of the self, and the emotional detachment carry on beyond Lumen to people's houses and their daily lives. Meaning there is a repetition in tones and themes between innies and outies. The second layer, I would say, concerns the environment or space. The environments of the show are all pretty similar in the rigid control they display. The symmetry and patterns suggest a continuous monotony and the idea that a deviation from the norm is not tolerated, if that makes sense. This is also manifested in light and shadow, and also, of course, in the sort of overall blue cast of the color correction and color in itself, but we'll get to these later on in the video. Because when we consider repetition as a technique in storytelling, we have to consider the impact it produces on the viewer once it's broken. When the series has moments that break this monotony and repetition of spaces and tones, for instance, a character finding out a secret room or a certain detail about themselves which break the idea of repeated motion and emotion, these moments have a greater impact, making the narrative much more enjoyable to watch because you as a viewer are also living this expectation, much like the characters, about what you can find next and the consequences of such find. Two photographers that use this technique of repetition quite well in their work are, for instance, Andreas Gursky on a more visual level, capturing themes of conformity and the overwhelming scale of modern systems and, of course, consumerism. And another photographer I would say would be Gregory Crutzen from a more emotional and mood perspective. So in Severance, we're exposed to a world of fluorescent lighting and much artificial lighting even when outside of Lumen's offices. And so light and shadow have very specific roles here, since office lighting is so uniform that it creates overly bright scenarios or unnatural shadows that add to this unsettling feeling associated with these spaces. And so when we're at Lumen, even though the spaces look clean and organized, there is this inherited idea of lifelessness about it, much of it being given by precisely how unnatural the lighting is. In contrast with this, when we're at Mark's house, for instance, or in the personal environments of other characters, there's an abundance of dim pools of light, surrounded quite often by great darkness, which further enforces this idea of loneliness and alienation. Although I would say that in here, of course, depth of field and sense of scale can also help in perceiving these ideas and enhancing the contrasts producing by light and shadow. But I'd like to quote some words by Jessica Lee Gagné, who is the cinematographer of this show. We knew we wanted a unique visual tone that could enhance the show's unique variety of dramatic tones. For the underground world, we were inspired by photographers like Lars Thunbjörk and Lee Friedlander, who really embraced awkwardness within frames, whether it would be a wide group shot where everyone is oddly cropped by cubicle desks, or a strange wide angle that puts the camera in a place we don't usually go. Overcast skies, rain, fog, and occasionally snow were perfect to set the mood of Mark's state of mind. And the palette was intentionally bleak to amplify this further. And for the long, she says, we did shoot both worlds with the same lens package, but we would use the longer lenses more often on the outside and the wider lenses on the inside. We shot with a Sony Venice, and the lenses were Panavision C series, mainly with some 50 to 500 Panazoom lenses that I have a soft spot for. Each lens was specifically chosen, and the complete kit allowed us to do all crazy camera trickery we wanted. And talking about equipment and the importance that this specific equipment that I mentioned to you had, or the weight that it had in producing the results that we've seen and going above and beyond the initial intentions that, both director and crew had for, or vision for this show, I think it's time to take a brief moment to talk about a partner of the channel, and that is MPB. MPB is one of the largest online platforms where you can buy, sell, or trade your used photography or videography equipment. MPB's catalog is constantly being updated, so you might want to have a look because that is probably, there's something there that you might need. But alternatively, if you're looking to get rid of something that you don't use, or perhaps trade and upgrade your gear, then definitely have a look at MPB. And not only MPB offers this idea of flexibility, but they also offer, of course, a lot of peace of mind with, offering you 6-month warranty on all the purchases that you might have done through the website. But of course, also there's a great customer support that I've also personally used. I'm speaking to you in my personal experience here. I've sold to MPB and I've bought from MPB. So links will be down below if you want to check that out. I'd urge you to do so because it's the new year. You might have new goals. You certainly have new goals with your photography or videography. If you're inspired by Severance, why not? So take a look down below, and thank you MPB for kindly sponsoring today's segment. And now let's go back to talking about color. So on a last note, I wanted to briefly talk about colors and mood. And of course, given everything I've shown so far, there are 2 colors that come immediately to mind, and those are white and blue, which are colors we normally associate with neutral feelings or even relaxation. These are seen not only in many spaces, furniture, details of clothing, but also in the color grading of the show, which is inherently colder than what we would experience in real life. This is of course to enhance all the ideas we've discussed so far, which leads me to conclude that the meaning of these colors are purely artificial in my eyes. And it was perhaps inspired by this line of thinking that I started to notice other colors, and there's a particular color that I'd like to touch on: green. We associate green usually with fields, forests, grass. We associate green with good choices, with life and sustainability, right? But in my eyes, green in Severance provides a false sense of everything it represents. A false sense of life due to the nature of people being severed, an idea of false nature of the space, of being in contact with nature, if you will, of the people, and perhaps nature of what we're seeing. So my interpretation pertained to this false sense of reality, a false sense of security and righteousness. In conclusion, all the colors of this show have a reverse psychology sense, at least in my opinion, meaning that they work to produce an artificial sense of their true meaning. So this is definitely encouraging for us photographers to rethink the importance of color or lack thereof. And I guess talking about TV shows, if you're interested in movies, maybe more videos about this type of stuff, you can check out my second channel. I created it for that purpose. I really enjoy talking about these things. And there's films or movies that I can't really frame it in the photography kind of sense or what we can take from them as photographers. There's things that are more so like creative storytelling and other notions that I think would apply better in different contexts. So I don't want to mix the content here. Photography is the main channel and what's it about, and then second channel, you can check it out. It'll be about movies, directors, contemporary movies, shows, etc. Now I want to actually ask you, what did you think of this video? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What can you complement the ideas that I talked about? Have you watched Severance? Do you plan on watching Severance? Do you have any other ideas, or not ideas, more so a series that you think that all of us photographers can benefit from watching? If so, let me know down below, because people read the comments as well. They can take a lot from your comment. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. Thank you to all members for supporting the channel. And thank you, of course, that you're watching. Just by watching, you're supporting the channel. So I really appreciate that. Links to MPB will be down below. Just hitting the link, just having a look at the catalog really helps the channel as well, really helps keeping me doing videos. So I mean, I guess I'm being as transparent here as possible. So if you want to help out, check out down below MPB. Maybe there's something that you'd like, or maybe you want to sell something you're not really using. And yeah, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for all your support. So I guess I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
My frying pan is full of grease. My bathtub is full of dirty sheets.